Whether you like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, you're going to have to submit to someone, male or female or otherwise. There are no exceptions. You're going to submit to someone. YouTubers submit to YouTube. Federal workers, we submit to the federal government. Infantry, they submit to their commanding officer. United States citizens submit to their local police unit or state troopers or the National Guard. You're going to submit to someone. If you're out on the water, you're going to submit to the Navy or the Coast Guard or both. If you're out in the wilderness in the middle of Alaska, just the middle of nowhere, you're going to submit to the food chain and your place therein. You're going to submit. Like, there is no escaping it. And that's usually the biggest issue, is that people don't want to acknowledge that there's a given hierarchy and that you belong in there somewhere. Now, in the food chain, humans, we're blessed enough to have removed ourselves from the food chain whenever we use wisdom. Like, if you're out swimming in the middle of the ocean, you're back in the food chain. But if you're standing on land in the middle of your house with locked doors with a gun in your hand, you're on top of the world. So it takes wisdom for a lot of people to realize, if I change environments, the rules change. And some people, it just goes, it's too much for them. If you change environments, the rules are probably going to change. If you're single, the rules are different than being married. Both men and women, there's different rules. I'm transitioning out the Air Force. But when I was active duty, I had a hierarchy, the chain of command. That's one of the first things you learn in the military, is the chain of command and who is directly above you and who you report to and who you take lawful orders from. Lawful orders. Supervisor, flight chief. If someone outranks you, doesn't mean you follow them immediately, but you still got to listen to what they're saying. At least take in the information that you're receiving, not because of who they are, but because of what they are. If they outrank you, you listen to the what they are. Staff sergeant, that was me. I had troops below me. I had to give them lawful orders, which means I had to understand what is lawful. I had to know the regulations, the laws. So when I do give an order, I can enforce them because I understand that they're lawful. And it's not just me saying it, it's the U.S. government that's backing me, which is what a lot of people miss, is that they just want people to follow them blindly. No one's doing that. There's too much information. There's too much information. I have information. Alexa can holler back at me ASAP. Siri will say what's good. Google Assistant, Bixby. Everybody's ready to give you information. So no one's following anyone ignorantly in 2022. It's not happening. Let's actually go and define submissiveness. Ready to conform to the authority or will of others, meekly, obedient, or passive. I don't like the latter part of that definition, passive. I don't believe being submissive requires you to be passive. I do believe it requires you to be meek. So let's look that up. What does it mean to be meek? And I have my own definition, but I'm going to see what Google says. The first definition reads as follows: quiet, gentle, easily imposed on, submissive, circular reasoning. Don't like it. I have my own definition of meek. My definition of meek would be strength under control. Strength under control. It has nothing to do with being weak. It has everything to do with being strong, but yet you're in control of your words and your actions. Your decisions are under control. They're well thought out. You're not being rash. You're not being highly emotional and just erratic. You're thinking before you speak and before you do something. Therefore, you're taking accountability for your words and actions. A great analogy to understand submissiveness, this is probably the best one I could think of when I was doing my little prep for this. If you're the co-pilot, you can give directions without touching the steering wheel. There's one person in the car who touches the steering wheel. One. Everyone can look out a window and establish danger, yell out warnings. Watch out for this. There's a cop coming. There's an ambulance coming. Watch out for that over there. Everyone is able to identify threats and warnings and what have you. But there's one person in that car touching the steering wheel. To my knowledge, I don't think there are any exceptions. That's probably the best visual of how you should be submissive to someone. Again, a lot of this applies to both men and women, because in your workplace, you're going to have someone who you report to. You're going to submit to them. It doesn't mean that you're compliant in everything. It doesn't mean you break the law. It doesn't mean that you're passive. It means you can communicate properly. If you can't adapt to a given environment, you don't know how to communicate, you don't know how to use your words properly, you can't articulate what you're trying to get across, you're going to get removed from the environment. If you can't adapt, you're going to get removed from the environment. Right now, I live in someone else's house. I'm submissive to both of them. It's a man and a woman. I live in their house. I'm submissive to whatever they tell me. Why? Because if I don't like the rules, I can go get my own house. I'm paying rent, but I'm not paying the mortgage. I'm paying them rent, but I'm not paying the mortgage. So I understand submissiveness doesn't mean that I can't ask the AC lowered a little bit. I can't close my door and keep the dog and the cats out. I don't have a curfew. But if they established a curfew and say, hey, I know you're living here temporarily, please don't come in this house after 2 a.m. I would submit to their authority in the given hierarchy that I'm currently in because I understand their position relative to mine. It has nothing to do with my strength, my abilities, my muscles. I'm stronger than both of them. I'm bigger than both of them. I'm more physically imposing than both of them. And yet I still understand if I want to stay in their house, I follow their rules. That's submissiveness. It doesn't make me weak. It makes me wise. And most people, it goes so far over. It's too much for them. It's unfortunate.